There are two ways to build a life: on the shifting sands of circumstance or on the solid rock of an unshakable foundation. The man who builds on sand allows the winds of the world to dictate his destiny. He looks outward, reacting to conditions, blaming fate and hoping for change. But the wise man knows better. He understands that life is not shaped by chance, luck, or external forces. He does not wait for the world to change before he believes in his own power. Instead, he builds his life on the rock, on that which is unseen but more real than anything the eyes can behold. He lays his foundation within, where all creation begins. Storms may come, the winds may howl, the world may say it is impossible, but the one who is built upon the rock remains unmoved, for he knows the secret. The outer world is nothing but a reflection of the inner. Like the wise man, I choose to build my life on the rock, not on fleeting appearances, but on the truth that I alone am the creator of my reality. In life, there are two foundations upon which we can build. One is solid and unshakable, the other fragile and fleeting. The wise man chooses the rock, while the unwise man chooses the sand. But what are these elements really? The rock is imagination, the power to see beyond the present, to create from within, to shape reality according to one's inner vision. The sand is fear, the acceptance of external conditions as fixed, the belief that circumstances dictate fate, the surrender to the idea that one is powerless. The man who builds on sand is ruled by what his senses tell him. He sees lack and believes in lack. He experiences failure and assumes it is final. He looks at his life and says, this is just the way things are, never realizing that he is standing on an unstable foundation, one that will collapse the moment hardship arrives. Fear is deceptive. It appears rational. It convinces us that we must play it safe, that we must accept things as they are, that we must not dream too boldly. And so, the man who builds on sand adjusts himself to the world instead of adjusting the world to him. He drifts at the mercy of circumstances, hoping things will change, but never daring to take control. The wise man, however, knows that true stability is not found in what can be seen, but in what can be imagined. He does not accept reality as something given. He creates it. He understands that everything in life first begins as an idea, an assumption, a belief held firmly within. He does not wait for conditions to change before he feels secure, wealthy, or successful. Instead, he builds those feelings within, knowing that the external must eventually mirror the internal. Imagination is his foundation, and because it is unshakable, so is he. Those who rely on fear believe that they are at the mercy of the world. They wait for signs, for permission, for proof that things will work out before they take action. But the wise man does not wait. He assumes the truth of his desires before they appear. He walks by faith, not by sight. To him, imagination is the only reality, and what is imagined persistently must come to pass. Fear may whisper doubts in his ear, may attempt to shake his foundation, may tell him that he is foolish for trusting in things unseen, but he does not waver, because he knows that imagination is the only rock upon which anything lasting can be built. Everything that exists in our world first existed in consciousness. Before there was form, before there was action, before there was even the idea of material reality, there was awareness. Consciousness is the foundation upon which all things are built, the unseen force that gives life to every experience, every event, every object we perceive. It is not something separate from us. It is us. It is the very essence of being, the creative power that shapes the world not from without, but from within. Most people believe that reality is something external, something independent of themselves. They assume that the world exists first and that they must simply respond to it. They react to circumstances, believing that life happens to them rather than through them. They say, I am poor because the economy is bad, or I am unhappy because of what someone else did to me. They do not realize that every condition they face is nothing more than a reflection of their inner state. Their thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions, whether conscious or unconscious, have solidified into the world they now call reality. Consciousness is the cause, the world is the effect. To change the effect, one must first change the cause. But rather than turning inward, most people struggle against the outer world. They fight circumstances, blame others, and look for solutions outside of themselves. They believe that if they can just fix this one thing, a job, a relationship, a financial problem, then they will finally be at peace. Yet even when they succeed in changing their conditions, new problems arise because they have not addressed the true source. They are like a man trying to change his reflection in a mirror by altering the glass, never realizing that the image he sees is simply a projection of himself. The wise man knows that consciousness is the only reality. He understands that his inner world, his thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs, is the blueprint from which all external conditions are formed. He does not seek to manipulate the world directly, for he knows that the world is merely a shadow, an outpicturing of what he holds within. Instead, he takes control of his mind, carefully choosing the ideas he entertains, the emotions he nurtures, and the beliefs he allows to take root. He is deliberate in his thinking because he knows that what he accepts as true in consciousness must become true in the world. Those who fail to recognize this truth live as prisoners of their own unexamined thoughts. They believe they are bound by circumstances, yet they never stop to question where those circumstances came from. They accept lack, struggle, and limitation as inevitable because they do not realize that these things only persist as long as they are accepted as real. They live by sight rather than by vision, never understanding that what they see is only a reflection of past thoughts and assumptions. The wise man, however, sees beyond appearances. He knows that reality is not something given, but something created. He knows that by assuming the feeling of his wish fulfilled, he is setting in motion the very forces that will bring it to pass. He knows that consciousness is the only reality, and from this truth he builds his life. Everything in life is shaped by the state we habitually occupy, and the key to this state is feeling. Thought alone is not enough. Words alone are not enough. It is not merely affirmations, nor wishful thinking, nor even the intellectual understanding of a principle that brings about change. It is feeling, deep, sustained, and embodied, that determines the foundation upon which we stand. Feeling is not just an emotion. It is the secret force that binds us to the reality we experience. Most people drift through life reacting to circumstances, believing their emotions are dictated by the world around them. They feel happy when things are going well, discouraged when faced with obstacles, and fearful when confronted with uncertainty. They do not realize that this approach is unstable, for it places the power of their inner world in the hands of external events. The man who builds his life upon external conditions builds upon sand. His happiness, his security, and his peace are constantly at the mercy of forces beyond his control. But the wise man understands that feeling is the cause, not the effect. He does not wait for circumstances to give him permission to feel successful, abundant, or loved. He assumes the feeling of his wish fulfilled now, knowing that by doing so, he establishes it as reality. He does not merely say, "I am successful," and hope for change. He embodies the feeling of success, living in the certainty that it is already done. He does not merely say, "I am secure," while secretly fearing loss. He dwells in the feeling of stability, and because he does, his world conforms to that state. Feeling is not something we can force. It is not a mechanical process. It is something we sink into, something we surrender to. The one who understands this does not need to struggle or strain. He simply assumes the feeling of his desired state and abides there. If he desires wealth, he does not chase money. He assumes the feeling of financial ease, and in doing so, he naturally attracts the conditions that match it. If he desires love, he does not search outwardly for it. He assumes the feeling of being deeply loved, and the world reflects this assumption back to him. There is a vast difference between wishing for something and feeling that it is already yours. Wishing acknowledges separation, a lack, a desire unfulfilled. But feeling in the deepest sense creates the bridge between what is imagined and what is experienced. Feeling is faith in action. It is knowing that what is assumed in consciousness must harden into fact. The wise man does not allow the external world to dictate his state. He does not react to appearances. He determines within himself how he will feel, and by doing so, he builds a foundation that no external event can shake. When storms arise, the man who relies on circumstances to sustain his peace will falter, because his peace was never truly his own. But the one who has mastered the art of feeling stands firm. He does not waver when difficulties appear, for his foundation is not built on conditions, but on the unwavering stability of his inner state. His feelings are not the result of the world, they are the cause of it. The world moves according to his assumption, and because he knows this, he holds the secret to true stability. Faith is not hope, nor is it mere belief. It is not a wishful expectation of something that may or may not happen. Faith is certainty. It is the unseen foundation upon which all things rest. It is the substance, the very essence of what has not yet appeared in the physical world, but already exists in the invisible realm of consciousness. Faith is knowing, beyond all doubt, that what is assumed will be made real. Most people live by sight. They trust only in what they can see, hear, and touch. They look at their present circumstances and declare them to be facts, unchangeable and absolute. They say, "I will believe it when I see it," not realizing that this very attitude ensures they never will. To them, faith is something fragile, something secondary to reason, something they turn to only when all logical solutions have failed. They do not understand that faith is not an alternative to reality. It is reality. It is the unseen cause behind every seen effect. The wise man does not wait for proof before he believes. He does not require external validation before he assumes his desire to be fulfilled. He understands that all things must first exist in the unseen before they can be made manifest. Just as a seed is planted in darkness before it emerges into the light, every creation begins as an invisible assumption before it takes form. He does not question whether his assumption will become real, for he knows that it already is real, the moment he accepts it as true. Faith does not depend on evidence, it creates evidence. The one who truly possesses faith does not waver, even when the senses contradict him. He does not look to the outer world for confirmation, for he knows that the outer world is simply a delayed reflection of his inner conviction. He does not ask when will it happen, for he understands that time is irrelevant to faith. What is assumed to be true in consciousness must become true in experience, and so he rests in the knowing that it is already done. To those without faith, this seems like folly. They say, "How can I claim to have something when I do not?" But this question reveals their misunderstanding, for they still believe in the illusion of separation. They see themselves as apart from their desires, when in truth they are one with them the moment they assume their fulfillment. Faith does not require that something be seen. It requires only that it be felt as real. The wise man does not concern himself with appearances. He concerns himself only with the conviction that what is unseen is more real than what is seen. Doubt is the enemy of faith, but doubt is powerless in the presence of true conviction. The man who possesses faith does not entertain conflicting thoughts. He does not allow external circumstances to dictate his inner state. He does not give power to delays, setbacks, or obstacles, for he knows that these are mere shadows with no substance of their own. He holds steadfast to his assumption, allowing no opposing belief to take root. His world must conform, for it has no choice. Faith is not blind, it is the highest form of vision. It sees beyond the physical, beyond limitations, beyond the temporary illusions of lack and struggle. It recognizes that reality is not fixed, that nothing is set in stone, that all things are fluid and can be reshaped by the consciousness that beholds them. It does not require effort, for faith does not struggle, it simply knows. It does not demand proof, for faith itself is the proof of what is to come. It does not fear the unknown, for to faith there is no unknown. There is only the certainty that what is felt within must be experienced without. A foundation is only as strong as the force it can withstand. A house may appear sturdy on the surface, but its true strength is revealed when the winds howl, the rain pours, and the ground shakes beneath it. The same is true of life. Anyone can feel secure when conditions are favorable, when everything is going according to plan, when the path ahead is clear and unobstructed. But what happens when adversity strikes? What happens when the expected turns into the unexpected? When the world no longer aligns with one's desires? When the waves of uncertainty crash against the structure of one's beliefs? This is when the foundation is tested. This is when life asks the question, what are you truly standing on? If a person has built their foundation on external circumstances, on wealth, status, relationships, or the approval of others, then they are like the man who built his house on sand. When the storm arrives, when the external support is taken away, their security crumbles. They feel lost, powerless, and uncertain because their stability was never real. It was only an illusion, dependent on conditions beyond their control. But the wise man understands that stability cannot come from anything outside of himself. He has built his life on the rock, on that which does not change. His foundation is not money, nor reputation, nor any fleeting thing, but rather the unshakable truth that all power resides within him. He does not waver when storms appear, for he knows they are temporary, mere tests of the solidity of his belief. He does not fear loss, for he knows that nothing is ever truly lost. What is within him must be reflected in the world again. He does not allow circumstances to dictate his state of being, for he understands that his inner world is the only true reality. Many people live in fear of hardship, constantly trying to shield themselves from discomfort, rejection, or failure. They seek guarantees, assurances that nothing will go wrong, that life will unfold exactly as they wish it to. But they do not realize that it is only through challenges that their foundation is revealed. A belief that collapses in the face of adversity was never truly believed. A faith that disappears when tested was never truly faith. The storms do not create weakness, they expose it. And so, the man who welcomes the storm as a revelation of his own strength is the one who will endure. Some people see difficulties as signs to give up, as proof that their desires are unattainable. But the wise man sees difficulties as opportunities to deepen his conviction. He knows that if his foundation is built upon truth, then no force in the world can shake it. If he desires abundance, He does not abandon his belief at the first sign of financial struggle. If he desires love, he does not surrender to loneliness when things do not unfold immediately. If he desires success, he does not let setbacks define his future. Instead, he stands firm, knowing that what is real in consciousness must eventually be made real in the world. A foundation is proven not by words, but by endurance. It is easy to say, "I believe in my power," when things are easy. But true belief is demonstrated when everything appears to be against it. The wise man does not merely profess faith, he lives it. He does not retreat in fear, he remains unmoved. And in doing so, he proves that his foundation is not a fragile dream, but an unbreakable reality. The greatest secret to shaping reality is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to dwell mentally in the state of the desire's completion, to live in the end before the end has physically arrived. Most people live in the middle. They see their desires as distant, something they must work toward, something outside of themselves. They hope, they wait, they wish, but they do not assume. They do not dare to claim their desire as already theirs, and so they remain in a state of longing, never realizing that as long as they persist in wanting, they confirm to the world that they do not have. To live in the end is to abandon all doubt, to think, feel, and act as if the desired state is already accomplished. It is not to wait for external confirmation, but to accept without question that the reality sought is already real. It is not pretending, it is knowing. It is not forcing, it is surrendering completely to the assumption that what is imagined must be made manifest. The outer world is a mirror. It can only reflect what is held within. If one assumes lack, the world will show lack. If one assumes success, the world will shape itself to reflect success. Most people believe that circumstances determine their state of mind. They say, "I will feel happy when I have wealth," or "I will feel secure when I have love." But the wise man reverses this process. He understands that to experience anything outwardly, he must first possess it inwardly. He does not wait for signs, he creates the signs. He does not ask how will it happen, for he knows that the how is irrelevant. He concerns himself only with the state of being, dwelling in the certainty that the world must align with his assumption. To live in the end requires discipline. The senses will attempt to contradict the assumption. The world may present opposing evidence. Doubts may arise, whispering that the desire is too distant, too difficult, too impossible. But the one who understands the law does not waver. He does not entertain these illusions, for he knows they have no real power. He remains steadfast, dwelling persistently in the state of fulfillment, refusing to react to anything that does not align with his inner conviction. When a seed is planted, one does not dig it up every day to check if it is growing. One does not question whether it will sprout. One knows that the process is already set in motion, that the outcome is inevitable. So it is with assumption. Once the end is accepted as true, the unseen forces of creation begin to move. Paths unfold. Events shift. People, places, and circumstances rearrange themselves in perfect alignment. But the wise man does not concern himself with these details. He knows that all he must do is remain in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Most people attempt to force reality. They push, they struggle, they try to manipulate the world with action alone. But action without assumption is empty. It is movement without power. The man who lives in the end does not act from a place of need. He acts from fulfillment. He does not chase after his desire. He moves through life as one who already possesses it. He does not worry about time, for he knows that time itself must bend to the certainty of his state. The world has no choice but to conform to the assumption held within. It is law, absolute and unchanging. The one who masters this principle does not hope. He knows. He does not wish, he claims. And because he has fully accepted the end, the world must rearrange itself to make it so. The wise man builds his life on the rock, not on the shifting sands of circumstance. He understands that the foundation of all things is within, that imagination is the key, that feeling is the secret, that faith is the substance, and that living in the end is the only path to true creation. He does not wait for the world to change before he believes. He believes, and the world must change. He does not seek stability in external conditions. He finds it in the unwavering certainty of his own assumption. Storms may come, but they only serve to prove the strength of his foundation. The world may present contradictions, but he remains unmoved, knowing that reality must bend to his inner conviction. He does not react to appearances. He creates them. He does not waver in the face of doubt. He stands firm in the knowing that what is felt as real must become real. To build on the rock is to live deliberately, to shape life from within, to claim the truth of one's desires before they appear. It is to walk by faith, not by sight, to persist in assumption until the world conforms. This is the path of the wise, the path of mastery, the path of those who understand that they are not at the mercy of life, they are the creators of it.